Well, hello traders and investors. I'm LA Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets and we're doing it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we're asking ourselves what happened today and what might it tell us about the coming ones. Do the show 4 times a week every Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It's archived on YouTube, son of a channel LA Little. If you want to subscribe, reach up and do so. It's in the right hand corner up there. Anytime I push content that's not private, in other words for members only, then you'll get a notification of it. As far as what happened in these markets, let's look at the numbers here. S&P 500 actually ends up slightly down, as does the index, the NDX, the NASDAQ, and the Russell. And they were all up. They were all up on the Fed. They gave it all up by the end of the day. It was a down day across the board, just slightly down. Had the big bounce to start the day. That was what we were thinking was going to take place. Had the big spike up on the Fed, then it tried to come back again, and then eventually by the end of the day sold off and finished in the red. Bonds shoot higher. The overseas markets were mostly higher, and we also saw gold shoot up again today too. Fed, what did they say? Hey, we can't raise rates, period. Right? They keep saying they're going to raise rates, and they keep saying they can't. And every time we come around to this time point, we get the same thing out of the Fed. And the Fed is that, well, it's this or it's that. There's always something. And, market likes that. But the market is beginning to wonder if this economy really might be in a recession, I think. And they're beginning to wonder, Fed's saying 2% growth. Fed's been saying a lot of things. Most of them keep getting downgraded. We got downgrades on the GDP expectations. We got downgrades on the rate expectations. We got downgrades on everything today from the Fed in terms of their vision. Now, next week, we will get all the speakers again, right? And then we will add to the confusion one more time. And then we also have the British vote next Thursday. So a lot of turmoil still in place for another week at least. And these markets, they got their bounce, but it didn't last. And let's look at that bounce and see what I'm talking about. So let's start here with the S&P 500. So if we look at the S&P 500, the bounce I'm talking about was here. We got the nice big push up, and then we got a pause, right? And a reversal. So what did this do neoclassically? Well, if you're looking at this, what you actually have to see is you see yesterday's high, today's high. What does it do? It gets over it, back under it, has less volume, right? So it tested higher, failed to stay up there. That's typically not a good thing. Now, the other thing that's not good is you actually now have the potential ABCD structure to the downside. In other words, we got an A point. And today, we got a higher high, higher low. That gives us a B point potentially. And if that is the spot, what is it going to do? It's going to take us all the way down to the lows, right? All the way back down to this 2027 area if, in fact, it starts to shoot down. So that's the concern coming into tomorrow. Now, what's the other good part or potentially bad part? Well, that is that the retest regen that is taking place, which is a bullish one, is still holding. In other words, you came down, you tried to test it, you held, you tried to bounce back up, you got to the top of that bar, and this morning, members in my morning broadcast, that's exactly where I told you that's the first spot that you should expect the sellers, and what happened? That's where they sold it. You always are looking for the low risk entries, right, to see if that's where the sellers are going to show up or the buyers are going to show up. In other words, I can put on a short here and I don't have to give it much, right? If I don't have to give it much, I don't have to take much risk on my entry. If I'm wrong, I can pull it without much of a loss. If I'm right, voila, I'm back in the trade and we're heading back down. So that was the story today when you look at it from a neoclassical perspective. As far as the other indexes, you're going to see pretty much the same thing across the board in each of these. Here's the NASDAQ composite, A, B, C, D points. An NDX, same thing, A, B, a C point potentially, and the Russell, same thing, volume the same across all of them. If you look over in the world markets, now last night we were looking at it and saying, hey, it looks to me like we may see some further degradation in these world markets, but as we were looking at the U.S. markets, it looked like we'd probably get a bounce out of them. We started last night with the DAX. We might as well go back there again. And so we'd come into the swing point low, tested into it. Big, strong push down, right? These vertical moves, very hard to sustain when you get these kind of moves. So you've got a very vertical move going. A lot of price points on the way down have broken. And so, when you look at this from that perspective, let me redraw this so we can see the numbers completely. When you look at it from that perspective, right, you go down from what is it, about 10.3 down to 9.4, so you drop almost 9% straight away 5 days. That's not sustainable. And so you still, even with a little bounce today, right, you're probably going to come down tomorrow and test these lows again. If you break them, if we go to the weekly chart, if you break them, you're going to be breaking on the weekly as well, and that's the swing point down here. So you see a swing point low, it's coming in, it's going to try to test it. Right now it looks like it's going to have about the same volume, maybe a little bit more by the time we get through with Friday. And that price point that we talked about that it was going to try to get to eventually is there. And so this actually has set up to try to get into that. And it's going to do it straight away. And if it does it straight away, the odds of breaking this down immediately are not very good. And so you're going to get a bounce in here somewhere. The question is do you come off the swing point low, or do you come off the high of the high volume low wide price spread bar? So that's the test there. DAX, that was the DAX. If we look at the CACs also straight away to the downside, and then they get a little bounce today. They're already under that low, trying to break it down. If we go over to Switzerland, Switzerland had been one of the strongest, or actually best trade setups that we've been watching. But anymore, it's looking just as bad as the rest, and it's not giving us any better tells. This one also gets under the lows, gets a bounce, right? And the one thing, I was doing a mentoring program yesterday, and the one thing I was talking about is anytime you break, right? And so in this case, for example, we broke right here, got up underneath that swing point low, broke this swing point low, got up underneath it, right? The very first thing you should always think when you get a break is, what is the retest going to look like, right? Well, what does it do today? It tests right to the top and then gives it up, right back down the other way. So that's trying to quote-unquote regenerate in a straightaway fashion, trying to regenerate to the downside, and that's not a good scene. So Fed didn't do anything to help Europe. If we look over in Asia, it really didn't do much to help Asia either. If we look at, well, we're going to see that tonight, but if you look in Japan last night, is ABCD structure down. We'll see if they try to bounce that one tonight. And where was Hong Kong? Here it is. And if we look at Hong Kong, right, Hong Kong, a big push down, gets a reversal last night, but has more volume than the prior day. Also has more volume than the bar it tested into. It's going to come back down there. Whether it does it straight away or not is a different question, but I don't think this move is done. At least the test of the downside isn't. You got a big spike up here, and there was volume on this today, so that's actually a good sign. And I was noticing, I was looking at the currencies. That's the Shanghai market. I was looking at the currencies, and I noticed that we're seeing some devaluation taking place now in the Asian currency, the yuan. And let me pull that up. Here it is here. And so this devaluation that's taking place here, you can see it coming down slowly, right, devaluing farther and farther to the downside. The other thing that you could look at in terms of Europe while we're sitting on these charts is this same sort of situation in the bank shares. The bank shares are what's leading Europe lower. We were talking about gold breaking higher. We haven't looked at gold chart in a while. Gold is up there testing the high. It's going to try to get over it tomorrow. It's going to test into that high. Doesn't have the volume yet, but volume's picking up. It's going to try to test that high and try to get over it, and that's going to be a key trade tomorrow for that market. Silver's been the weaker sister, hasn't gotten to the high yet, and if gold gets up and over, I'm sure silver's going to try as well. Finally, we get the bonds top out today, or at least they give you a little 2-bar reversal after another one of those unsustainable moves to the top side. Finally, oil's been beating to his own drummer here. Got the reversal today, breaks the swing point lows, looks like it wants to go lower. It's coming into a retest regen off this high. I suspect it will get a bounce off of here, and then we're going to see if the oil market really has topped. If you look at it on a weekly, it came in to do the retest regen. 1237 on the USO. Where does it get to? 1245. So 37. Let me get the number again. 37 gets to 45. What is that? That's a bearish retest regenerate after way more than 6 bars. What does that say it's going to happen? It says it's going to try and regenerate to the downside, and the probabilities of that regeneration are very high, and that's exactly what's taking place. I told members about a week ago this was a good looking trade and they might start thinking about it. Hopefully a few of them took me up on that offer. As far as what else, well, that's about it for today, I believe, and it looks to me like you're going to try to get some more pressure. You are going to get a bounce in here somewhere, so don't get gung-ho about we're going to the hell in a handbasket, because I'm sure the bulls are going to come in. If you're a member, of course, I will tell you where I think that's going to be, and I'll do that tomorrow. Have a great night. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Good night.